Besides the usual fodder, heavy, and super heavy classes, demons in Doom the Dark Ages can actually be grouped into 4 main archetypes. In this video, we're going to be breaking down what those types are, how they work, and how they apply to each demon. Every demon has what I'd call an optimal engagement distance, a sweet spot where they're the most vulnerable or easiest to deal with. Identifying these sweet spots and reacting accordingly is a big part of the Dark Ages combat. So if you understand what kind of enemy types you're facing, you can make these reads much quicker and play more efficiently. Now, most demons don't fit neatly into a single category. They usually pull from 2 types at once, and that's what I call a hybrid. Some are split pretty evenly, but most lean more towards one type than the other. We can refer to these as biased hybrids. Now, hybrids, both even and biased, make up most of the demon roster, but every now and then, you'll run into something a little different. A demon that doesn't just fit into 2 categories, but 3. These are what I call anomalies. They're rare, multi-layered, and demand more nuanced strategies. So far, I've only found 2 demons that I consider true anomalies, but if you've got some different thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments. Since there are a lot of demons to cover, we're going to be splitting this up into 2 parts. With that being said, let's get into the 4 types of demons in Doom the Dark Ages. For the first category, we have Rune Bait. These are demons that specialize in firing big, slow, parryable projectiles, specifically to give you chances to trigger your rune. You'll usually find them hanging back at a distance where they can safely lob these attacks from afar. If they aren't already at long range, then creating that distance yourself will often be enough to bait them into throwing out a parryable, hence the name Rune Bait. It's actually not a bad strategy to keep these demons alive on purpose, if the fight allows you to do so, effectively turning them into rune farms. Next up, we've got Poke Demons. These are going to be our long-range threats or snipers. Like Rune Bait enemies, they prefer to keep their distance and consistently chip away at you from across the arena. But the main difference is that many poke projectiles cannot be parried, and those that can be are typically harder to react to due to their speed. In other words, these guys are going to be more serious long-range threats and will force you to respect their presence. Poke Demons tend to have lower health overall since they are inherently harder enemies to reach. Up next, we have the Brawlers. Brawlers are melee-oriented enemies with 0 to minimal projectile-based attacks. Because of their focus on melee combat, Brawlers are ultra-aggressive, opting to chase you down instead of waiting for you to come to them. A lot of the more mobile demons in the game will fall under this category, and since they're constantly pushing up into your space, they're usually a bit tankier to back that up. Finally, we have the Control Demons. These are the ones that try to take charge of the fight, dictating how you move and where you can go. Whether they're throwing up barriers, laying down hazards, or just carving out space, their ultimate goal is to limit your options and slow you down. Usually these demons don't move much themselves. Instead, they lock down parts of the arena and command you to engage them. Because of that, they tend to have the highest health pools, since they're designed to hold territory. Now that we've got a clear idea of what each type does, let's talk about how these roles apply to specific demons. Starting off with the Imp Stalker, this one is a textbook example of a 100% Rune Bait enemy. Its whole purpose is to lob the slowest, easiest to parry projectiles in the game. Just stay at range, and you can reliably bait out his signature green fireball, if you can even call it a fireball. In big arena fights, it's actually smart to leave these guys alive. With how slow their projectiles are, they're basically mobile rune dispensers, but don't get too close. If you do, you risk triggering their lunge attack, which can be surprisingly fast and lethal. Pinky Riders fall into the same category, 100% Rune Bait. Despite the Rider's arrow projectile being a bit fast, it's still very easy to parry, and it's also the demon's go-to move, so you're guaranteed to bait out several parryables. Combine that with the Pinky's slow, upright heat waves, and you've got another reliable source of rune activation. That said, I wouldn't recommend keeping these guys around. The arrow can catch you off guard if you're not paying attention, so it's usually best to just parry their attack, slam into them with a shield bash, and finish them off with a super shotgun. Next up, we've got the Hell Knight, which you've probably guessed is a pure-blooded brawler. These guys are all melee all the time with no ranged option. They'll chase you around relentlessly and can take a bit more punishment than the other heavies, usually needing 2 direct super shotgun blasts instead of just 1. Luckily, they're not too hard to manage. You can interrupt their attack windups pretty reliably with a well-timed shield throw. Battle Knights are where things get more interesting. They're still mostly brawlers, but they've got a bit of Rune Bait mixed in, which makes them our first biased hybrid. The key difference is their Axe Throw, a long-range attack that you can bait out if you keep your distance. It's a slow-moving projectile and super easy to parry, but it's not their default move. If you try to run, they'll usually still close the gap and pressure you with melee strikes. Moving on to the Arachnotron, this one's almost a pure poke archetype with a bit of control mixed in. Their long-range mounted machine gun will absolutely melt your health bar or shield durability if left unchecked. It's undoubtedly their most powerful asset, but they aren't just long-range pressure units. Arachnotrons can also drop landmines. These mines are great for defending their immediate space. Get too close and they're quick to go off for some scary burst damage. So it's best to delete these guys before they can get those mines off. A quick shield bash into a super shotgun blast usually does the trick. Generally, it's good practice to stick them with your shield after you slam into them so they can't retaliate. On top of the mines, Arachnotrons are also very immobile, which is representative of the control archetype. Next, we've got the Ballistatron, which fills a similar role, but with a few key twists. Like the Arachnotron, it's a bias hybrid, leaning heavily into poke with some control. In place of the machine gun, Ballistatrons have a mounted ballista that fires unparryable spear shots. They can also launch several vertical heat waves, accompanied by that weird little golden snitch type orb. Technically, you can parry the orb, but it's small, fast, and hard to track. Definitely not a reliable source of Rune Bait. Now, these demons still carry landmines like the Arachnotrons, maintaining that little bit of control, but they're also noticeably tankier, so you could argue that they're more of an even split between the types. Still, I think the poke behavior dominates enough to keep it classified as a biased hybrid. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one though, so let me know which classification you guys think fits best. And now moving on to the super heavies. Next up is the Cosmic Baron, a biased hybrid that leans heavily into Brawl with a dash of Rune Bait. Most of the time they're in your face, relentlessly chasing you down and landing brutal melee attacks, classic brawler behavior. But if you create some distance, say with a shield bash, they'll often respond by launching one of two parryable projectiles, the Focus Shot or the Cosmic Arcs. The Focus Shot is a wide energy blast, but it's only parryable in the center, and it also moves quite a bit faster than you'd see from a dedicated Rune Bait end. That said, they don't throw it out very often. More commonly, they'll fire the Cosmic Arcs, a spread of 5 energy waves where only one arc in each volley can actually be parried. Sometimes these arcs clip into walls or into other demons, so it's not the most consistent option, but the Baron can launch multiple waves in a row, which gives you a few chances to trigger your rune. So while they're definitely a brawler first, there's enough range behavior in there to make them an effective biased hybrid. Now let's talk about the Vagary, an even control Rune Bait hybrid. These demons are absurdly tanky with multiple armored sections, and are constantly launching toxic ground hazard, forcing you to reposition. While this clearly establishes them as control-based demons, their most common attacks include a variety of parryables, which gives them a secondary Rune Bait function. The first attack to look out for are the Mixed Fireballs. This move contains one parryable projectile amongst 5 total fireballs. They aren't very fast, but they are by no means slow, so repositioning to catch the right fireball can be a bit of a challenge. Then there is the Connect 4 attack, which is easier to deal with. As the name implies, the Vagary will launch several fireballs in columns of 4. Again, only one of these columns can actually be parried. But the way they hover in the air for just a second before heading your way makes them a lot easier to read and react to. Neither attack is particularly difficult to deal with as long as you're not crowding the Vagary. Just keep your distance, stay mobile, and they'll hand you rune activations while you work around their area denial. Finally, the Aggadon Hunter is one of the more layered enemies in the game, and easily qualifies as an anomaly. At a glance, he's a classic brawler, but his behavior shows clear traits from both the control and poke archetypes. If you try to keep your distance, he'll trigger an invincibility barrier. When this barrier is active, he'll begin to fire his signature Phantom Shield projectile, flanked by 2 tracking skulls. These are attacks that you cannot ignore. They'll harass you relentlessly until you finally engage him up close. Even once you enter melee range, disabling his barrier, he still controls the tempo of the fight, only exposing himself as he winds up for big melee swings. The Hunter fights on his terms, and if you don't respect it, he'll punish you fast. It's that mix of close range aggression, restrictions on engagement distances, and range pressure that firmly places him in anomaly territory. And that concludes all of the demons we're covering in today's video. If you guys would like to see a part 2, make sure to leave a like. Let me know what demons you guys are most interested in seeing next, and until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Rip and tear.